Did you just flip over the back of a desk or something? Don't take no L's, Danny. Talk to me about like, all right, so early on in your career, Kato, the producer, eating ramen and, talk to me about like some of the earliest opportunities you can remember that you got. What made you think that they were good opportunities and how you pursued them and how they turned out?
I can remember one opportunity in particular. One of my friends, Mike, he was an artist and rapper at the time. I was still pretty new to producing, but I was working on a lot of stuff with him. And he was still, very much upcoming himself. And he was in the military, but he was honorably discharged. But they get checks after their service. And so he was getting these checks from the military and he was reinvesting that back into his music career. Lil Scrappy was like popping at the time, And so he hit up Lil Scrappy's management and we ended up securing a feature from him. So we pulled up to the studio together. This was Don Cannon's old studio. It was like Mean Street Studios. And so we pulled up and Scrappy, came to the studio. And that was my first time that I got a pretty major artist on one of my tracks. And it was cool just being in the studio. I'm sure I was like a nervous, awkward wreck, First time being in a real studio, first time being with a major artist. And so I was just geeked to just be there. Yeah, he cut his verse right there in the studio. And then boom, all of a sudden I had Lil Scrappy on one of my records. So
What you remember what year that was? Like what time period?
Man, what year was Scrappy popping? That was 2000 maybe it was like 2012? Earlier than that, maybe? 2008, maybe? That era?
So walk me through what happened with the record, because I think that's important.
I mean, it came out. It's really crazy to even talk about because this was like pre-streaming era. And so we were literally pressing up demo CDs. MySpace was the main distribution platform. So we were just spamming people on MySpace messages. And I mean, it didn't really pop off. We were just geeked to have Scrappy on one of our records. And yeah, so I guess independently, it was a very independent release.
Yep. I mean, look, I think it's important to talk about because I think a lot of times when people, there's a narrative where it's like, yo, there was an opportunity. I took advantage of it. My whole life changed overnight and everything was different. I immediately got rich. My car became a Mercedes-Benz with the wave of a hand. It's like part of me feels like opportunities in our space are series of opportunities, right? People look at it in the macro and not necessarily the micro. It's like you got the little Scrappy thing. Then what happened? Another part of that story could have been like, yo, I linked up with this guy who was just starting a distribution company and it was like number one trending on that early. And then that led to Lil Scrappy's friend who just happened to be Young Dolph. There's never just one thing that changes everything. And you go from I was unheard of and terrible. I had this one opportunity. Now I'm great and so well off. Like it's a series of things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the important part that people don't talk about, right? The journey. And it's hard to even have foresight into that when you're so early in the journey because you think every opportunity is going to change your life. But in retrospect, now being 15 years into the game, I can look back and say that Scrappy opportunity was the first of many, 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 many steps to get me here, right? It was the first time I had experience being in a real studio, working with a major artist, getting to just see and be around that environment just put me on game, And then that led to me connecting with certain people because they heard that song that we were pushing super hard on MySpace. And then that led to another thing. There's steps to it. And I think it's really important for people to take advantage of as many of those opportunities as they can because it's all cumulative. Like it adds up to these moments later on down the line, which is what you want.
100%. And I think the last point is it's how prepared you are to take advantage of the opportunity. It's like
Yes.
if you get the little Scrappy thing, and let's be honest, if you're Kato, the producer now getting that opportunity, Scrappy goes back to all his boys and it's like, yo, Kato just gave me the coldest pack. This dude is next up, whatever. You know what I mean? You're early on, you're just starting to make beats. You probably have some really good stuff, but not in comparison to Cannon and some of the people that are pulling up to work at Mean Street. And so it's a process. And I like to think about that as well, just because sometimes people are like, oh, I got it. I shot my shot, uh, the biggest rat Uzi, got on this beat. It's over now. Now in their head, they're the coldest. So you're not quite there yet. Like if
Yeah.
you know when you're there, and that's all. Sometimes I like feel like people will tell themselves that this one thing happened, so it means that I'm one of the best, and it's like until it's crack. And I always say this, and I always feel weird about saying it because one, I'm not a drugs guy, never do. I call them drugs, which tells you how much I really do drugs, like never. You know what I mean? Like, but the reality is sometimes until you can push the button and people, the reaction is visceral, right?
Yeah.
Like, yo, oh my gosh, bro. Next, like it's not hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When it's hard and you got to explain it or you got to sell it, to me, that's like a challenge. But the moment that you pushed play and people were like, yo, Kato, how do we work together? Or, yo, this is, you know what I mean? It was not like I just kept hitting them and chasing them. You didn't have to chase anything. You just was like, here it is. And people were like, yo, whatever it is, I want it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. And that's funny you mentioned that because during that studio session with Scrappy, I played the beat for him because it was the first time hearing the beat. And they were super fucking with the beat really hard. And Scrappy kind of went into a side room to talk with his manager. And it was very secretive, right? Because I think they were trying to figure out a way to make that Scrappy song featuring, or just buying out the beat. They were trying to figure out how to finesse the situation so that they could get the beat, right?
Yep.
And so that was for me as a producer. I was like, well, damn, I guess I really do have some good shit,
Yeah.
It was just cool affirmation for me. All this is to say that this is why I think it's important to have people in your corner that have experience, a certain level of experience, because they can kind of add that perspective. They can be like, whoa, slow down, bro.
Yeah.
Still got a long way to go. This isn't going to change your life. This one situation isn't going to move the needle, right? But it is the first step. So having people in your corner that can give you that perspective is super, super valuable, I think.
Yep. I love that. And I think that kind of validation, it's like on the artist side, I know there would be times when people either get a deal or are pursuing a deal. And there was a time when if you got a record deal, people were like, oh, it's over, life's everything. And it's like, that's the beginning of the game. And now it's like, whether it's a record deal, distribution deal, people are investing in you, whatever, it's cool, but that's like the beginning of the work. And so I love that because the kind of validation that tells you, yep, working, what you thought this is, you know what I mean? That's a challenge. And sometimes I think people look at the wrong things to validate next steps for them. And you can kind of tell when they think they're popping, you just like, that's not what you think it is, but cool. You know what I mean? I love that.
It's wild for me that I'm in this position now to be able to give that to someone else, give that perspective to someone else. Because I was literally in their shoes not that long ago, at least in my memory, So to be able to just kind of pay it forward is dope.
So let's talk about that. What's it like now for you to be able to give your community the opportunities that either you had and weren't able to take advantage of, or that you didn't have and now are able to give that to other people? What's that like to be able to create those opportunities for your community?
I love it. I think that because I didn't come up having a ton of opportunities, like I really had to grind my ass off for everything. You know, like nothing was ever given to me. I had opportunities that were presented to me in early stages of my career, but even for those, I had to work really, really hard to even get those, you know? So for me to just be able to like, yo guys, I'm throwing out a song challenge where you can just make a song and then have the possibility of flying to Atlanta and meeting with me on BOB and getting in the studio, it's crazy. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, the good stuff always floats to the top. You know, I'm a very big believer in that. So if you're doing everything that you should be doing, plus you have great music, it's going to show, you know? And so that's really what I'm looking for through these song challenges and contests. And so that's always been my objective from day one.
And let's get into that a little deeper, and and we'll split it up. We'll talk about the way that people take advantage of the producer submissions and some of the producer opportunities you have and some of the artist opportunities you have. I will start with the producer submissions, and in my head I know I'm seeing a bunch of those a bit more than you are, or at least vetting them before I send it to you to kind of get your thoughts. Before a producer submission, talk to me about what you think makes a special producer submission, or something that makes it stick out, something that a producer can send that makes you want to be like, yeah, this dude needs to be a part of my team.
I think more than anything, what I look for is someone who is specialized in something. And you can usually tell, right? When you hear the first beat, the sound design on this is crazy, or the drums just has a different type of bounce to it, or it just gives you a feeling or a mood, right? And then you listen to the next one and it's consistent with that. Like it has the same quality as the first one. Not to say that it has to be identical, but it has that same distinctive quality to it. And then you listen to the third one and it's the same thing, right? So it's like, I look for those, someone who is very obviously good at one thing that I might not necessarily be great at myself, but it complements my skill set, you know? And so me as a producer, that's kind of what I look for, you know, and then all the other stuff. It's like work ethic, you know, how much time are you dedicating to this? Do you also post content? Do you also do all these other things that I think are necessary to be a successful producer in 2024? But it's really that special thing that stands out.
Yep. And so on the back of that, let me tell you before it gets to you, tell people before it gets to you how it gets to you.
Yeah.
Number one, if I have to copy the Instagram link into a search bar, I send it straight to the dog pile, because it is not hard to make a link that I can click on and go straight to it. Mind you, you have over 700 submissions and climbing every day in that folder. So nothing makes it easy. If it's going to be easy for me, it gets looked at. If it's going to be difficult in the slightest way, it goes to the dog pile.
Yep.
Number two, the things that make it really attractive for me, like if someone can put the name of the beat, the key of the beat, and the BPM of the beat, or at least a little information about it. So if it's something that you were interested in and wanted to work on, you could jump into it and it not be a hassle for you, like searching for that information. It also shows a little level of professionalism, because let's be honest, the barrier to entry for being a producer, and I split them up into beat makers and producers. The barrier to entry to make a beat at lowest level, a beat maker, right? Someone who's got the program, imports in some loops, has some drum sounds, and can like make something that is coherently a piece of production, as we call it, or an instrumental that is low. So like if you can't do like the little things to show little pieces of professionalism, that drives me insane. I cut it off quickly. And I think, you know, in even in the Instagram, there does have to be something special about it. Like anything that sounds stock anything that's the same thing that you can hear anywhere and you can tell someone just put this loop, these drums, flattened it out, maybe a little lift in, 16 bars in, that's like a chorus. Like, it's too stock for me. Like, someone needs to be able to do something that sounds unique to get to you. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you can make stock yourself. You can take stock and manipulate it and make something into it yourself. So I'm not going to send you something if it's like stock sounding and it sounds like the same loop off of Splice that everybody else uses. That drives me insane. And I think last, it's like a little blurb, right? Hey, Kato, what's good? Thanks for the opportunity. Really excited. I also play guitar. I also play drums. I'm really good at engineering. I mean, I had someone put like, hey, my thing is getting loops and doing the drums around them. And I was like, cool. It gives me an idea of like what you're into. But like the ones that get skipped every time have in the subject, the Instagram handle, and then 3 beats with some random names and no info. Those go straight to the dog pile. I'm just telling people right now, if you're submitting in the producer Gmail and the submissions Gmail in general, and you're a producer that sent your handle in the subject and 3 beats, that went to the dog pile, just so you know. You know what I'm saying?
But that shows something, right? It's like, it shows a level of how bad do you want this? You know what I mean? Because we have probably, a couple thousand submissions in that email inbox already.
I mean, there's at least 700 that I made, like that I decided to listen to. There's definitively more than that, but there's like 700 of them that are like, that at least got a listen.
Right. And I'm not signing 700 producers. You know what
Facts.
I mean? It's like at most, a few of them are going to cut through and are going to end up, getting a producer deal with Kato on the track. So if you can't show that little bit of initiative to take it one step further and make it stand out in some way, it's just like your music. Like, you want your beats to stand out, you want your songs to stand out. What's different about it? And the same thing goes for your etiquette in terms of how you approach certain opportunities. And at the end of the day, the second thing is like, we're building a team, right? So if you're not coherent of certain ways to communicate with other people, then that shows that you're probably not good at working with a team. Like, if you can't be a team player, and if you're not cognizant of like what other people are looking for or what you should do, then I think that speaks a lot to your ability to be a part of a team.
Yep. And so in my head, and this is a question, it's like, to the BOB opportunity, as you look at talent, right? Like, someone uploads something to Instagram, TikTok, whatever. It's got your beat underneath it. It pops up. Walk me through the things that make you listen to something or see something and like keep you. You know what I mean? Because like you and I both have this mentality about like the first whatever seconds, or like bro had a thing, or he sat in a pocket well, like all those things. But I want people to get an idea of like where your brain goes, so they know when they submit something like, yeah, Kato might really rock with this. You know what I mean?
It's funny, bro, because I look at a lot of these things from so many different lenses. I look at it from a content creator lens. I look at it from a producer lens. I look at it from a, just overall like entertainment value lens too, right? Because music is entertainment. So I think the first thing is, as a content creator, how is this being presented? Like, how much effort was taken into making this video? Are you just rapping over the audio that's playing out of your phone? Because there will clearly be an echo in the background, or the audio won't sound as crisp and clear. That tells me just right off bat, like, how much effort did you put into this, right? The second thing is like, does it sound good? Are you spitting? Or if you're a singer, like, how good do your vocals sound? Like, what are you talking about? What's the subject matter? What's the concept? Um, and then the last thing, yeah, I think those are the main two things that I look for. But both really, really important when you're trying to stand out with thousands of other submissions, you know?
Yep. And I think, one more thing that I'll add to that, and it's funny because this piece is so subjective, right? Like, you may get one that's got the echo in the background and bro did rap on his phone, but if it's fire, you
Yeah.
still mess with it. And I think it comes down to, am I moved?
Yeah.
Right? There's so many times that you get something where it's like a singer and he did go into the studio, he got it auto-tuned, whatever, and it's still terrible. And it's
Yeah.
like, why is it still terrible? Because I'm bored to tears. Like, something about it doesn't resonate with anything in me. I don't believe it. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't, there's just a temperature about it that doesn't feel like a thing that anyone cares about. And I'll say, there's when I used to get when I used to be heavy on the publishing side and I was getting like 60 records a day. If someone said the phrase, and forgive me, it's off color, but if someone said the phrase, "She's sucking my dick," if I had to hear that phrase one more, I would immediately eliminate it, because I need to really believe that you're the type of MC, rapper, singer, whatever, that is so potently like romantic, or people are
Yeah.
just super into you, that is happening to you on a consistent basis. Like,
Yeah.
I gotta believe it. And if I don't, I am so clicked to not just stop listening, but erase, because
Yeah.
and again, it's subjective, right? You and I are going to hear some things. Somebody's going to send something. We don't think it's fire. Someone else does. That person goes platinum, and their story is like, yo, we sent something to Kato. He wasn't messing with it. That gave me the fuel. I went on and did some of those things. Like, that's the business.
Yeah.
But the reality is, it's like, yo, move the person you're trying, like, be an artist that can create something that moves people. That's, you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
And sometimes it's just early. Sometimes it's just you
Facts.
haven't quite developed that skill yet, but in a couple years that'll completely change, right? Like, there have been times where I send you duets from like artists that are really popping now that duetted one of my beats on TikTok 3-4 years ago, and I might have skipped over it or I didn't see it at all. But listening to it now, it was like, okay, it's cool, but it's like kind of a blueprint of who you went on to become, right?
Facts.
Like Mexican OT, I duetted one of my beats, like a couple of my beats years ago, before the record with Paul Wall, before the Johnny Dang record. Fly and a Boss, they duetted a couple of my beats years ago, right? And it was good. I think there was something special there, but still wasn't as developed as what they have now. So there's so many of these examples where it was just early in the process. Having that consistency to see it through and not give up and really develop that skill that speaks for itself.
And this is where we need to make sure that people understand the difference between me and you. I think you are so good at hearing something and encouraging someone to be better and thinking through like what it's missing. And I am like judge, jury, and executioner, bro. Like, I apologize to everyone in advance, but I can't do it's like, if it's good, it's good. If it's not, it's not. Artists, producers are not owed careers. Like,
Yeah.
there's some people that are really, really dope that don't get their shot. Like, a lot of this is skill and some of this is real chance and like opportunity. And so when people get an opportunity, if it's not good, I'm never going to be the one that like is going to be like, man, if you just keep working, no, this does not work for what I need. I got to move on, because the business is harsh. Like, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in the world of Kato on the track. You have a lot of things that we need to accomplish in the next few years, and it's going to be a great future, but everybody doesn't get to ride that wave. And so
Right.
I know that you said that I'm going to catch a beating in the comments. I'm good with that, but people just need to know it's like there's a talent level that people need. You know what I mean? Like, and I want you're building something special. You're a special kind of entrepreneur. The kind of consistency that you've put into this over the last 10 years plus is insane. So you don't owe people things, in
That's
my
true.
opinion.
That's true. And here's the biggest takeaway from this, right? No matter what you or I say, no matter how much we tell someone this ain't it, right? Or maybe you should pursue a different career, the Mexican OT or the Flyana Boss or the Caitlin or the Joyner Lucas or the tokens of the world are not going to take that feedback and let it affect their path to where they're going, right?
Facts.
They're going to hear that and be like, I don't give a fuck. Like, I'm going to do what I believe is my path to, success. And so, it's like, it doesn't really matter what I say at the end of the day. If you're meant to do something, it's going to happen. What I say is not going to change that.
Yep. I mean, look, I'll say this. There was a very prominent, very, very, very early on in my career when I used to be a producer, not an executive. There was a guy at Sony. I'll let him remain nameless, but he is an amazing executive. He was in the publishing space. He was crushing it. He had signed a number of big boys, and he heard my stuff and liked one song that I had. And I sent him some more stuff and he didn't like it. And to this day, I can still hit this dude up and be like, what's good? You know what I mean? Like, he shouldn't have signed me as a producer and didn't. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but I was real, like, it was real motivating, like fuel for the fire type stuff for me. And like, I went on to do better things in a different space. And I say this all the time. Sometimes people aren't producers. Sometimes they're artists and not producers. Sometimes they're producers and not artists. Sometimes they're managers and not artists. Sometimes they're executives and not artists. Sometimes they should be in the publishing space or the live world. And there's a lot of folks that I think pigeonhole themselves into pieces of the business and aren't open to the other spots or don't know what the other spots are. And I think that that's important for people to know. It really, there's so much about what I think that you're doing this year. There's so many opportunities for your community, and the folks that really follow you and kind of want to be artists or want to be producers. What's any advice that you can give them, whether it's an opportunity in your system with production or artistry or any of the things that, there's so much that you have to announce this year that's going to be special. But is there any last kind of nugget or tidbit that you want to give them about not just getting your attention, but getting anyone's attention when it comes to making music, making art, and how best they can cut through the noise and like be something special?
That's a hard one, bro. I think
I know.
At the end of the day, it comes down to creating music that you want to make. Because to me, there's longevity in that, right? Yep. Making art that you believe in. It's like when I look at myself or anyone else that I've worked with, especially in those early days of my career, it was like we were just making shit that felt good to us. We were just making shit that was fun for us or stuff that spoke to us. And that was always the music that resonated the most with people.
Yeah.
And I think if it's coming from an authentic place, it cuts through. People feel that. So in an era where everyone is comparing and everyone has an opinion about what you do, and it's like you got to figure out a way to just shut out all that noise, just lock yourself in the studio and just make art that you believe in at the end of the day. That's really what it comes down to for me. And I think if you do that consistently enough and you develop that skill set of songwriting or you develop that skill set of producing, it'll be good and people will listen.
Love that. Love that as a last bar.